They say the human body can survive 21 days without food, 3 days without water, and 11 minutes without oxygen. They never mention how long it takes to survive humiliation, because I'm on year 6, and I still feel it in my spine when I sleep. It started with a joke. Not a loud, funny one. A soft one. Whispered. Inside a hospital. I was still half sedated, tubes down my throat, my body more wires than skin. The nurse had stepped out. It was just her and me. And the steady beep of the heart monitor. She leaned in. "You should have seen your face when you fell," she giggled. "I wish I'd recorded it. Everyone thinks it was an accident, Grover. Isn't that wild?" She kissed my forehead. I remember the scent of cinnamon gum and expensive perfume. I remember trying to move. I couldn't. And then I remember her saying, "But don't worry. I told everyone you tripped. It's not technically a lie." She left before the nurse returned. 6 years later, I've learned to walk again. I've rebuilt everything. New town. New name. Different silence. But she found me. Last week. She looked older. She looked nervous. She asked, "How'd you survive?" I looked her dead in the eye and said 2 words. She dropped to her knees, sobbing, repeating the same sentence like a broken metronome. "No, it can't be." And now, for the first time in 6 years, I'm ready to talk. Not for her. For me. When I said those 2 words to her, simple, quiet, final, she collapsed in the parking lot like her bones had been yanked out by invisible wires. I didn't even flinch. I just stood there, watching her unravel, like a painting melting in the sun. She didn't expect to see me. Not in this version. Not whole. She thought I'd stayed broken, hidden, buried under the weight of what happened that night. But that version of me, the one who trusted, who smiled through humiliation, who whispered apologies to people who never deserved them, died 6 years ago under white fluorescent lights and morphine haze. I left her there on the pavement, curled up like a child in front of Pump 7 at a dusty gas station, whispering, "No, no, it can't be." Over and over, like it would undo me being there. Like it would rewrite what she did. It won't. You see, everyone believes I fell. That's the story she sold. Clumsy Grover, always in his own head, slipped and tumbled 3 stories from the balcony at her friend's engagement party. Tragic, but believable. After all, I never made waves. Never stood out. I was just the guy holding the coats, making polite conversation, smiling too much. And while I lay in the ICU with 4 shattered ribs, a cracked vertebra, and lungs like wet paper, she went to brunch the next morning in the same dress, sipping Bellinis while laughing with the man I'd later learn was part of the plan. But you don't fake a fall like that without someone noticing the details. And there was one thing she missed. The vase. It was this ugly green ceramic vase her mother had given her. The one she kept on the edge of the balcony. The one I'd always asked her to move because it gave me a weird feeling. When I fell, that vase should have shattered. It was right where I landed. But it didn't. It was gone. Removed. As if someone made sure it wouldn't be part of the story. The paramedics didn't mention it. The photos didn't show it. But I remembered. In all the fog and pain, I remembered asking her the day before to move it. She said no. So where did it go? That's what started everything. The questions. The whispers in my head. And eventually, the discovery. I won't lie, the road back wasn't heroic. It was pathetic. I cried into paper hospital cups. I screamed in elevators. I Googled how to disappear at 3 a.m. from a rehab facility computer. And when I finally left the hospital, I didn't call a soul. I cashed out my retirement, shaved my head, and rented a moldy trailer in the middle of nowhere under a fake name. But the thing about pain is, it sharpens you. You stop needing answers. You start collecting facts. And eventually, you start to see through people, even the ones you once thought were made of light. Over the years, I found out just enough. About the other man. About the money. About the life insurance talk she had with her sister a week before the fall. But I kept quiet. Because I needed more than justice. I needed silence. I needed her silence. And now that she's seen me, that silence is broken. And I'm not sure which one of us is in more danger. I didn't go looking for her. I swear that on what's left of my name. I had moved on. Or at least, I thought I had. New name, new town, new rhythm. I stocked shelves at night and read old detective novels in the day. I kept my head down. I kept quiet. I stayed small. That was the plan. Until the call came. No number. Just a voice I hadn't heard in years. Grover. It wasn't her. It was her friend. Jenna. I hadn't even realized she still had my old number. Apparently, it still worked. Probably because I'd never bothered to change the last SIM card in a backup phone I kept buried in a shoebox. She said she found it in an old group text thread and wanted to check in. Said she had a weird feeling. I don't believe in fate, but I believe in mistakes. I didn't speak. I just listened. And that's when Jenna started to cry. Maribel's not well, she said, voice cracking. She's seeing things. Hearing things. She thinks someone's watching her. I waited. Not a word. She said she saw you, Jenna added, her voice lowering. At a gas station last week. She swears it was you. She said you spoke to her. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it meant it worked. Those 2 words I said to her, words I haven't revealed to you yet, had begun to do what I needed them to do. Break her from the inside. She thought I was dead. That's the version she told herself. That's the lie she could live with. But now she doesn't know. And not knowing is worse than guilt. It corrodes. It infects everything. It makes the sound of your own breath feel suspicious. It makes the voice in your head sound like someone else's. I waited a few weeks. I let the paranoia settle in her bones like mold in drywall. Then I sent the first package. No return address. Just a small, square box with 1 item inside. The green ceramic vase. Not broken. Still intact. Wrapped in velvet. I had it all along. Found it in her storage unit 2 years ago under a pile of old clothes and wedding decor. She'd hidden it like a piece of evidence. Like a secret that might whisper the truth if left exposed. Alongside the vase, I placed 1 single Polaroid. A blurry image from the engagement party. Me, standing on the balcony, arms resting on the railing. And just behind me, slightly out of focus, a shadow. A figure. Reaching. I never showed anyone that photo before. But I made sure she'd see it now. She received it on a Monday. By Tuesday, she'd filed a police report. By Thursday, she hired a private investigator. And by Saturday, she stopped leaving her house altogether. I know this because I've been watching. Not out of revenge. Not really. I don't care about payback anymore. What I care about is silence. Not mine, hers. She took mine for years. Stole it with smiles, laughter, and that one long fall that should have ended me. Now, she gets to live with her own version of silence. The kind that whispers at night. The kind that sounds like footsteps in the attic when no one else is home. The kind that never tells her what those 2 words really meant. But I will tell you. Eventually. The thing about hiring a private investigator is this. They only find what you want to be found. Unless someone like me leaves them something they were never supposed to see. I knew she'd hire one. Maribel's always had this belief that money is a universal solvent. That if something's messy, confusing, or scary, you just throw enough bills at it until it dissolves. So I made sure her PI found exactly what I wanted him to. Nothing. Well, almost nothing. It took him a week to start snooping. His name was Royce, a former cop turned discreet solutions provider. I knew the type. He thought he was too smart for his job, but not quite smart enough to see when he was being played. First, he traced my hospital records. I'd wiped most of them clean. The fall, the rehab center, the ID change. All of it carefully buried under new paperwork and strategic data blackouts. But I'd left one breadcrumb, hidden in plain sight. A dated hospital report marked patient status. Deceased, filed 12 days after my discharge. It was fake. I typed it myself at the public library 2 towns over and slipped it into an old backup server that still fed their digital archives. Royce found it within days. Called her that night. Told her he's dead. You saw a ghost. I can only imagine her face when she heard that. Her eyes darting, lips trembling, the familiar sense of control slipping out of her fingers like water. But she didn't stop there. She couldn't. That's the thing about liars. They don't need proof to know they're in danger. Their own guilt becomes its own evidence. So she went deeper. She drove 6 hours to the rehab center where I learned to walk again. Showed them my photo. Asked questions. Paid cash. Got stonewalled. I'd already been there the week before. Paid off the clerk. Left behind a copy of my own death certificate. Fake, yes, but very official looking. So when she walked in all desperate and trembling and said, "Have you seen this man?" The woman behind the desk smiled gently and said, "Ma'am, that man passed away. We sent flowers." That night, she cracked. I know because I was outside her house. Watching. It's not as creepy as it sounds. Or maybe it is. I don't care anymore. I sat in the shadows across from her new suburban rental. Lights off. Curtains closed. But through the kitchen window, I saw her throw something. A vase, maybe. Fitting, isn't it? She screamed. The kind of scream you only make when you don't know what you're really screaming at. Herself? The past? Me? Later, she sat on the floor, holding her knees, rocking back and forth like a child caught in a nightmare she designed herself. And that's when I knew she was exactly where I needed her. Not afraid of what I'd do, but afraid of what she doesn't know I've already done. Because it's not just about her anymore. There's something else. Something she forgot. Something someone else forgot, too. And if either of them remembers it, well, let's just say the fall wasn't the only thing she pushed that night. But we'll get there. I always knew it wouldn't take just her to break the silence. People like Mary Bell don't live in isolation. They build their lives like stage sets, full of smiling extras who clap when they're told and never look behind the curtains. But one of those extras? He saw something. He just didn't know it mattered. Not until I reminded him. His name was Owen. Quiet guy. Soft-spoken. He worked as a bartender at the engagement party the night I fell. I remembered him because he was the only one who offered me a glass of water instead of champagne. The only person that night who didn't treat me like I was a boring appendix to Mary Bell's highlight reel. Back then, he seemed barely present, like he was always thinking about something else. Maybe that's what kept him honest. A few weeks ago, I tracked him down. He now manages a failing pool hall in Ohio, lives above it, drives a car with no passenger side mirror, and smokes like time's running out. I waited until his shift ended, then followed him to the alley where he always lit his last cigarette of the night. I didn't confront him. I didn't even speak. I just placed an envelope on the hood of his car and walked away. Inside the envelope was a photo, one from that night. Me, on the balcony. The same blurry image I'd sent to Mary Bell, but this one had a note on the back. You were behind the bar. You saw who went upstairs. You saw who came back down alone. That's all I wrote. 2 days later, he called her. He shouldn't have. He told her someone left him a photo. Told her he'd been thinking about that night ever since. Said he hadn't realized how strange it was that Mary Bell was the one who found me first. That she told everyone I slipped, even before the ambulance arrived. That she didn't scream. Just appeared. Calm. Composed. Almost like she was waiting for it. She didn't take it well. She showed up at his work the next day. Accused him of trying to blackmail her. Told him to keep his mouth shut. That digging up the past helps no one. I don't know if she realized he was recording the conversation. Maybe she didn't care. Maybe panic was finally louder than her control. But now there's audio. Proof. Tone. Threats. Her voice breaking in real time as she realizes that her grip on the story she crafted so carefully, is slipping like wet glass in her hands. The best part? I didn't tell Owen anything else. Not who I was. Not what happened. Just planted the seed. And now it's growing on its own. The truth is, people don't need to be convinced of a lie. They just need to feel like they're the ones uncovering it. That's when they dig deepest. That's when they find things you never had to say out loud. I heard from Jenna again, too. She's been distant from Mary Bell for a while now, ever since the party. Said she started remembering little things. Things that didn't sit right. Like how Mary Bell asked to switch balcony doors that night. How she took a different route to the rooftop. How she offered to go check on Grover, like it was scripted. I didn't have to do anything but give them space to remember. And now they are. Piece by piece. And I haven't even shown them the worst part yet. The part under the balcony. The part that should have never been there. But it was. And I have the photo. The photo is old, grainy, taken from a poor angle with an outdated phone. At first glance, it looks like nothing. A simple shot of the ground outside the balcony, snapped sometime in the early morning after the party ended. You can barely make out the outline of the tiles, slick with dew, and a few scattered cigarette butts near the railing. But in the lower left corner, almost obscured by shadow, is something else. A shoe. Not mine. Size 9. Tan heel. A scuff on the side. The exact pair Mary Bell wore that night. The problem? She told everyone she never came outside. Said she was inside the entire time, helping with dishes, talking to Cassie, unaware I had even gone up there alone. Said she only came out after someone screamed. But that photo, captured by a neighbor across the street who happened to snap a shot because he thought the flashing lights from the ambulance looked cool against the skyline, tells a different story. She was there, outside, before anyone else. And somehow, in her rush to control the story, she forgot that we live in a world where everyone is holding a camera. I found that image a year ago. Spent months tracking down the photographer after stumbling across his post on an old photography blog. It wasn't even labeled properly, just titled City Night/October Fog. But I recognized the scene instantly. I reached out, asked if he had the original, paid him $500 for the raw file, and told him I was writing a book. He didn't ask questions. People rarely do when you sound calm enough. For a year, I kept that photo to myself. Not out of hesitation, but strategy. You don't show your sharpest weapon until your enemy's already bleeding. Last night, I finally sent it to her. Not digitally. I printed it. Matte finish. High contrast. No return address. Just the image, and a sticky note attached with a single sentence written in sharp black ink. You were the first one out there. Remember why? She received it this morning. At 11:47 a.m., she called Jenna. I know because I intercepted the call through a burner SIM left in Owen's phone. He had agreed to help me by then. I listened to her breathing before she even spoke. It was shallow, uneven, and when she finally spoke, her voice was thinner than I've ever heard it. He knows everything, she whispered. I think he planned this. Not just surviving. All of it. Every piece. Every person. Jenna didn't speak for a while. Then she asked, "What did you do, Mar?" And for the first time, she didn't have a lie. "I don't know anymore," she said, barely audible. "I did what I had to do, but I don't remember when it started." It's funny how guilt works. It doesn't always strike like lightning. Sometimes it just seeps. Quietly. Patiently. Until it's under your skin, and you're the one who starts asking questions you already know the answers to. She's unraveling. Faster now. And the more she spirals, the more she isolates. Her PI? Stopped answering her calls. Not because he quit, but because I paid him more. Owen. He's gone silent too. He left town yesterday morning. I covered his bus fare. Jenna? She's watching. Listening. Not sure which side to stand on. But I know she saved the photo. I saw her upload it to a private drive. And Maribel? She started making phone calls to lawyers. Good. Let her try to build walls. Because the next thing I send her isn't a photo. It's a memory. One she buried so deep, she forgot it wasn't hers alone. Guilt, when pressed long enough, doesn't just crack, it leaks. It spills out sideways, staining people who never meant to get close. And in Maribel's world, no one stood closer than her sister. Lydia. She was the soft one in the family. The background girl. Always following, never leading. The type of person who never made decisions, just agreed with the ones already made. The last time I saw her, she hugged me too tightly at our wedding and whispered, "Please don't break her." I thought she was being kind. I realize now it was something closer to fear. She reached out to me 5 days ago. Unprompted. Sent me a message through a dummy Instagram account that had 0 followers and 1 post. A photo of an old, half-burned birthday cake from 2012. The caption said, "You remember this night. So do I." I met her at a diner on the edge of a town I hadn't been near in 6 years. She wore a black hoodie, oversized sunglasses, and a kind of heaviness in her shoulders I didn't recognize. She looked at me like I was a ghost. "I shouldn't be doing this," she said before I even sat down. "But you need to know," she told me things. Back then, right after the fall. I didn't speak. I just stared. "She said it was your fault," Lydia continued, voice thin and careful. "Said you were drunk. Angry. Said you slipped trying to grab her." I raised one eyebrow. Not because I believed it, but because I'd heard that version already. It was the one she told Cassie. The one she used in the insurance claim. But I let Lydia speak. She came to me 2 nights later. She was shaking. Like, actually trembling. And she said something I never forgot, but I told myself I imagined it. I've replayed it 100 times. She paused. Her hand curled around the coffee cup like she needed it to stay grounded. She said, "I didn't mean for him to fall. I just needed him to see how replaceable he really is." I sat back slowly, letting the words settle. They didn't surprise me. They confirmed what I'd known. But hearing them from Lydia, from her own sister, changed something. She cried when she said it. Lydia whispered. But it wasn't guilt. It was panic. She said, "If he tells anyone what happened before the fall, I'm done. You understand that, right? I'm done." Before the fall. That's the part no one's ever asked about. Everyone talks about after. The blood. The panic. The ambulance. The screams. But no one ever asked what was said between us on that balcony. Maybe they didn't want to know. Maybe they thought it didn't matter. But it does. Because the fall wasn't an accident. It wasn't rage or drunkenness or even a moment of passion. It was punishment. She told me something up there. A single sentence that shattered my understanding of everything we'd built. Something I've never repeated out loud. And then she smiled. Not cruelly, not coldly, but softly, like she pitied me. And then, when I stepped back to breathe, to steady myself, I felt her hand on my chest. Just for a second. 1 second. Long enough to unbalance a man already on the edge. Long enough to make the fall feel like mine. Lydia looked at me then and said the one thing I didn't expect. I think she meant to scare you, not kill you. But when you lived, that's when she panicked. And I realized something. This wasn't about guilt. It was about the fact that I'd survived something she never intended to explain. I stood up from the booth, dropped a 20 on the table, and looked at Lydia one last time. She's going to try and rewrite this, I said. Lydia nodded. She already is. Then she reached into her purse and slid me a small voice recorder. I recorded her last week, she said. She doesn't know I kept it. I didn't ask what was on it. I didn't have to, because whatever came next wasn't about proving what happened. It was about making sure she never got to lie about it again. I didn't listen to the recording right away. I carried it in my coat pocket for 3 days like a live wire, afraid of what it would confirm. Not because I needed more proof. I had plenty, but because some truths, once spoken, can't be returned to silence. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to hear her voice say it out loud. I wasn't sure if I needed that final confirmation that she had pushed me, that she had intended to break something in me that night, even if it wasn't supposed to be my bones. But on the 4th night, I played it. It wasn't long. Just Maribel, pacing, angry, unaware she was being recorded. Her voice sharp, but not hysterical. The voice of someone justifying the unforgivable in real time. He was never supposed to stay. Grover was safe. That's all. He was there when I needed a break from the chaos. But then he started asking questions. Started noticing. And I panicked. That balcony wasn't planned. But when I saw the chance to scare him, I took it. I thought he'd fall, maybe sprain something. But when he hit the ground, I froze. And when he didn't die, I froze again. And I made up the rest. Click. That was it. No villain monologue. No tears. Just quiet truth, wrapped in selfish fear. But it was enough. I could have sent it to the police. Sent it to the media. Posted it online and let the world dissect her piece by piece. But I didn't. Because the point was never to destroy her. The point was to reclaim me. The next morning, I drove to her house. Not to confront. Not to accuse. Just to end it. She opened the door slowly, expecting maybe a neighbor or a package, not a ghost. Her face drained of color. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She looked older, smaller, and for the first time, unsure of what story she was supposed to tell. She stared at me for a long time. Finally, her voice broke the silence. How did you survive? I looked at her, all her weight in that question, all her confusion, her guilt, her need to make sense of something she thought had already been buried. And I answered with the only 2 words I'd been saving all this time. I chose. That was it. I chose to live. I chose to get up. I chose to disappear, not because I was broken, but because I refused to be part of her version of the story anymore. I chose to build a new life, slow, quiet, imperfect, but mine. I chose to remember who I was before her. Her knees buckled. She caught the doorframe to stay upright. Tears welled, but I didn't step forward. I'm sorry, she whispered. I nodded. Not in forgiveness. Just acknowledgement. Let her carry the weight now. I left the recorder in her mailbox. No threats. No signature. Just truth. And then I walked away. Today, I live by the ocean. It's not glamorous. I rent a tiny place above a bookstore where the pipes groan and the windows rattle when it storms. But it's mine. Every morning, I drink bad coffee on the porch and listen to the waves. And not once have I flinched at a shadow or startled at a memory. I don't need revenge. I don't need justice. I just needed distance and the quiet dignity of surviving something that was meant to erase me. People still ask why I disappeared. And when they do, I smile and say the same 2 words. I chose. Because in the end, surviving isn't just about staying alive. It's about deciding what kind of life is worth returning to. And I did.